Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to the Brand Bite podcast. I'm super duper excited to be welcoming our guest today, our guest today, Kate Gilbert. So Kate's clients affectionately dub her a hand holder slash butt kicker, which I freaking love, for her unique blend of compassionate support and a can-do, no BS attitude. She excels in guiding entrepreneurs past their comfort zones to build momentum towards big goals. So her 30-day sprint program equips business owners to get out of their social media ruts, to post high-quality, engaging content that actually is something that they enjoy doing, which I don't know about you guys, but social media is something that I have dreaded for a very long time. So I'm so freaking excited for Kate to be teaching us about this. I'm going to hand the reins over to her so she can start telling us all about how she got into entrepreneurship in the first place. And then we will dive into all things social media.
Thanks so much for having me. So I started my first business actually when I was 15 in my parents' garage. It was the summertime and all of my friends had jobs because all my friends were 16 already and I wasn't going to turn 16 for a few months yet. So I was kind of bummed out. I wanted a job. I was trying to figure out what to do. And my mom said, well, why don't you teach art classes or something? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you can run a camp. And I'm like, what? That's not possible. How would I do that? And she's like, you can do it in the garage. And I was like, okay. So I started my first business at 15. And then when I was in my 30s, I founded and ran an online knitting magazine for 10 years. I kind of ended up where I am right now very naturally because when the pandemic happened, people started calling me and being like, how did you run a business online for 10 years? I don't know what I'm going to do. I have to change everything. And so I started each week speaking to people on the phone, hanging out with them, trying to help them out. And eventually one of those people said to me, why aren't I paying you for this? And I was like, oh, this could be my job. I love doing this every week. So now I try to be the support that I really needed when I had my magazine, and that I think if I had had a Kate when I ran my magazine, that maybe I would have been able to keep it going. I would have been able to get more projects done and really create the vision that I had that I was never able to really fulfill with my magazine.
This is such a cool story. Listeners, you don't know, Kate and I have been chatting a little bit before hopping on and recording. And I feel like, Kate, you just get cooler and cooler with everything that comes out of your mouth. I freaking love this. So something that I'm really curious about, as you know, because you talked about if you had a Kate when you were running your magazine, things would have been different. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the things that you were doing then that were harder because you didn't have someone like you helping you out, or some things that maybe you were you kind of had to figure out on your own? Just anything that really tells us the story of kind of a before and after of these skills that you are now helping people with.
So the magazine was originally my idea, and then honestly, I didn't have the confidence to just launch it on my own. And so I brought on people to do different aspects of the business, like programming and editing and things like that. So for a bit, I did have partners, and then I bought them out and I continued the magazine on my own. And it was just a lot, not to get too into the dramatics of, life that happens to everybody, but during the time that I ran my magazine, I got divorced. I was raising my daughter on my own. Actually, toward the end of the magazine, I had cancer. So I just always had, everything on my shoulders. The buck stopped with me. I did have people who worked for me. I had various people who worked for me along the way, and many stayed with me for, 8 years. But I really could have used somebody to be like, okay, you have all these projects you want to do, you have these goals, how are we going to make them happen? How are you going to take the first step on that? And so that's what I find myself doing a lot with people. I know you mentioned social media, so everybody thinks I'm a social media person, but I'm not actually a social media person. I'm more right, what are the things you have to do? What are the things you want to do? And how can we build your business in a way that you can be really happy and it doesn't have to make you miserable, and you don't have to be up working all night and, completely exhausted and then burning yourself out. So I really just needed somebody. When I think back to all the things that I really wanted to accomplish, and I feel like I've barely dipped my toes into some of that stuff. And I definitely did end up burned out in the end, which is understandable. But I wish I had had somebody who could have held my hand a little bit, given me a loving kick in the butt, and helped me actually take steps toward my goals.
Well, I feel like having someone external from you because when you're in it, like you're in the weeds, you're not just in the like tactical weeds, but you're in the emotional weeds of it too. You talked about how you didn't have the confidence to start it all by yourself, and you brought people on, and that, created the additional steps that you had to take down the line and stuff like that. And I feel like we need someone who can look at it from a different angle and help us see the gaps that we're missing, especially when it comes to like enjoying the work that we do. We get into this because we like doing something, then we realize, oh shoot, like there's a million other things that go into running a business.
Yeah, I mean, I got into it because I was a knitting designer. I was designing sweaters and mittens and hats and whatever, and I was publishing my patterns with a magazine. And with traditional magazines, and then they came back to all of the designers with a revised contract that would have taken away all of our intellectual property rights for our previous designs and all designs going forward. And I said, no, I won't sign that. And a few of us pushed back and said, no, we won't sign it. I believe they did eventually change it. But in the meantime, I said, oh my gosh, I have no place to publish anymore. Like, I have no place to publish my designs. And I had a background in graphic design. I studied design and communication, and I worked actually for an independent magazine, and I worked for the guy who created the I Love New York logo, Milton Glaser, if that name means anything to anyone. And I just was like, I'm starting a magazine. And honestly, I did it. I had a 2-year-old. What the heck was I thinking? But I did it just being like, this is what I'm going to do because there needs to be a magazine that is out there for the designers and advantageous for the designers. So not to get too much into the weeds of like knitting design and how that world works, but I set up my magazine with a completely different pay structure that really sort of forced the entire industry to reorganize in terms of how they were paying designers, and it made it a much nicer place for designers. But anyway, I'm like, looking back, I'm like, I think I was so sleep deprived that I just thought I could do it. But it did bring in a lot of the different skills that I had from different things. And now I'm happy to be able to bring like all of those skills plus the skills I gained running that magazine for 10 years to work with other people and give them the confidence to do the things they want to do and help them move forward.
Well, I applaud you first and foremost for everyone listening. Read the contract. Don't sign away your stuff that you don't want to sign away. And for pushing back too. I feel like we oftentimes see larger entities, right, taking advantage of artists. And so I love that you and a few others like took a stand against that, and that you decided to start something, of your own.
Yeah.
And
I mean, in fairness to the people at the magazine, I think it came from like the parent company. I don't think it came from them. So, but still, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of something that I feel like we're seeing a lot right now of just like these, like I said, the larger corporations, even parent companies trickling down changes that are affecting people more than perhaps the companies are recognizing. So I love that you did that. I love that you were like, no, I'm going to change the pay structure of this. I'm going to find a way to do this different. I think that's awesome. And it sounds like you're kind of doing a little bit of that now in your current business, where you're approaching things differently than say other people are. And so I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about how you are approaching business differently for your clients to help them avoid this burnout and actually build something that they enjoy as opposed to eventually wind up dreading.
Well, I mean, as I started doing this work, it became clear that the sticking point for a lot of people was social media. So I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. Like, how can we do this without making ourselves miserable all the time? So I created a system that I called the content loop system, and I created like a spreadsheet basically where you go in and you answer questions about your business, and it builds you a 70 post social media plan. And then I teach you how to use that plan and then how to reuse that plan. So you're not reinventing the wheel all the time. And I'm not saying like you post number one the same way, 6 times or whatever. It's not like that. But it's about, okay, how can we create this content like really smartly? How can we do this the most efficient way we can, and also really with the people we're speaking to at the heart of it and really paying attention to them. So I'm not your person who's like, post, 5 reels a week and 6 stories a day. And I'm never, ever going to tell anybody to post more unless you're just not posting at all, in which case I'm like, okay, how can we take a first step here? But yeah, so I've created this system that anybody, like social media haters, can use. And we do a lot of mindset work about how we look at what we're doing, why we're doing it, like not just social media, but like our business. Why are we in it? And then therefore, why do we want to show up on social media? What is the point? And by doing that work, people come out of my program, or some people do it in the context of a VIP day with me. People come out of that with a totally different attitude about how and why they're showing up. And it just makes it a lot more doable for people.
Something that I'm really curious about is this mindset work that you mentioned, because I feel like I have been on the side of just like, I loathe social media. I've transitioned over to YouTube and I'm loving YouTube, but a number of the other platforms have been really frustrating for me. And so what are some of the ways that you're helping your clients kind of reframe social media, not as perhaps like a have to do, but as something that really is beneficial for them in their business and is not something they have to dread?
Well, I mean, I do actually have an entire book coming out about this soon. So, I mean, one thing, just to give like a basic reframing thought is I can tell you from personal experience that so many times people have come to me and just like DM'd me out of the blue or signed up for my program seemingly to me out of the blue and said like, oh, Kate, I really need your help. I want to work with you. I want to hire you for this. Can you meet me? And there have been many, many times that I'm like, who are you? I've never seen you before. I've never seen you interact with my content. So I think a lot of us are a little hung up on, our vanity metrics. We're a little hung up on, oh, I didn't get a lot of likes on this. But what we don't realize is that people are developing a parasocial relationship with us, even if they aren't liking and commenting. There are certain people who are just never going to like a post or never going to comment on a post, but they can show up in your world. And I've had that happen over and over again. And I also have several people who've been through this process with me or been through my group program who come back to me and say, now that I'm showing up and talking a little differently, opportunities are falling into my lap. People are contacting me, asking me, will you come give this presentation? Will you come be at this event? Will you use my product? Or, all kinds of things. And I hear that all the time from people. So I think we just need to stop. I mean, it sounds really obvious, but our value as a person is not connected to the number of likes we get on a post. And also, the potential success of my business is not connected to the number of likes I get on a post either. And one of the problems is people play this comparison game where they're looking at people who do similar things to them. And also, by the way, as soon as you start posting, like for example, anytime I'm talking about my group program and I start posting about social media more often, and I'm like, oh, I can help you, then all of a sudden, all these other social media coaches come out of the woodwork because the algorithm is like, oh, she's talking about this. She wants to see stuff about this. And it would be very easy for me to look at these other people who are sometimes huge names, like really big names, or can have thousands of likes on a post, and to think like, oh my gosh, like, why am I even doing this? Who am I to talk about this? I could get very in my head about this stuff, but the reality is my calendar's pretty full. My program fills up, and even though I'm not like the biggest name in the world, I still get business. And I know for a fact that I'm bringing people value and that what I have to say and what I have to share works and is right for a certain group of people.
Well, I'm glad you brought attention to what the algorithm does, because I think that you're right. I think we start posting about something and then suddenly start seeing it everywhere. And so easy to fall into the trap of, well, someone else bigger than me is already doing it. Why would I even try? And you bring up this great point that like people are still working with you too. Like there is a different flavor for each person. That's honestly, people listening, like that's where branding comes in too. Like showing up in a way that is unique to you and making sure that you're the kind of person or the type of brand that someone wants to work with. Because someone may not want to work with the big name, right? Maybe they want something that's a little more personalized.
I mean,
so
not to throw shade at any big names or anything, but like one reason to work with somebody like me is I will know your name. And I will be able to speak to you and your particular business. You know, you are not going to be in a chat section of thousands of people trying to ask a question in a call. You know, I will be able to look at you and answer it. There are lots of reasons to work with different kinds of people, you know, big, small, or different sorts of programs. And people are always looking for the right solution.
Exactly. And the right solution for them. And I think that's like one of the key points that we need to remember as business owners. And I think it's easy to get caught up, like you said, in more of those vanity metrics. I think especially because social media, we see a lot of influencer culture. Right.
Sure.
And so I'd love if you're able to talk on this. It's something that I feel I've struggled with as a business owner too, of like, if I show up on social media, am I trying to be an influencer? And you kind of get sucked into, oh, maybe I need to do these trends and stuff. And so how do you work with clients to keep them focused, right? Like if the goal is not necessarily likes and comments, but to get clients, how do you help them stay focused?
Well, first of all, it is very easy to get, sucked into this influencer kind of idea and think like, well, if I'm online, then I'm an influencer, or I have to act like an influencer. I need to follow the advice of these influencers about how to make it as an influencer. But what I tell people is a lot of the social media advice out there is not made for you. It is made for influencers. It's made for people who are making content 15 to 40 hours a week. Not people who are running a business and then making content that complements their business. I mean, I don't know any business owner who has 15 hours a week even to be making content. And so if I were following that advice, it'd kind of be like me saying, I want to get in shape. And so I'm going to follow The Rock's, workout and meal plan where he eats like 6 meals a day and works out for like, I don't know. I actually looked it up one time, like 5 hours a day or something, or I don't know how many. But like I could never in a million years work out the way he works out or eat what he eats. Like forget it. So you can't follow that advice. You have to figure out, what is it that I can do that will move the needle? How can I be super efficient at this? And how can I make sure that my messaging and my branding is really honed so I'm speaking to the right people, I'm communicating clearly, and immediately it's like I've put out this like bat signal to my people saying, hey, here I am. Come find me. I'm right here.
So thinking of like how you're helping clients kind of step up to the plate with social media, right? Because we talked about dread. Aside from like reminding them, look, like you're not here to be an influencer. You're not here to get, the likes and the comments. How else do you help them overcome the dread of stepping into social media in the first place? Like it feels like an additional task that we have to do as business owners. Sure. So how do you adjust that mindset and framework to get them showing up without having to pull their teeth out?
Well, I mean, beyond like being super efficient with how you do things and what you're saying and everything, there's the entire issue about how we're thinking about it. And a lot of people say to me, like, I'm afraid of being judged. I'm afraid, like, of failing publicly. I've heard that one. And I actually have something I call the Junior High Lunchroom Rule, which is, do you remember, like, walking into the Junior High lunchroom, like, on the first day of school and, like, you didn't even know if your friends necessarily had the same lunch period as you. And so you're, like, standing there with your tray and you're looking around, like, who can I sit with? Where are my friends? And and like you suddenly feel like super visible. Everybody's watching me not know where to sit. I was looking at my outfit and my new jeans and everybody's judging me. In fact, we're all worried about ourselves. And so we have to keep in mind, nobody is judging us as harshly as we are. And, after this podcast, I'm going to totally go like beat myself up about it a little bit. I'm going to think of all the things I could have said better, or like, did I have lipstick on my teeth or whatever? I'm going to totally do that because I always do. But in reality, even when I've said something in a weird way or not very articulately or did have lipstick on my teeth, because that is not necessarily uncommon for me, then, nobody has ever cared. Nobody's ever said anything to me. Nobody's ever been mean about it. I've had, podcasts where there was this one time where my head did this, like in my brain, I did this kind of like record scratch, and it took me a second to like finish my sentence, and I felt very awkward about it. And then someone reached out to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I really love what you said. And I was like, oh, okay, well, nobody really cares actually. And a friend of mine said, oh, I really liked how you said that. And I said, oh, well, it would have been better if I didn't have that like record scratch in my brain in the middle of it. And she's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So just think about, what's the advice that you would give to 13-year-old Hunter or 13-year-old whatever your name is, because we all give this advice to kids. Like, nobody's paying as much attention as you are. Everybody's worried about themselves, but we forget that. And social media platforms end up being this giant lunchroom. It is true there are people out there who want to be mean. But I've had very little of that in my life, despite being a very public figure for many years in the knitting world. It has happened. But for those of us who are not like female journalists, like generally, we can escape a lot of it. It's not going to happen to that many of us. So yeah. So that's one thing I like to think about is just you don't have to worry so much about it. What everyone else is thinking, because nobody's thinking about you.
When you brought up the middle school lunchroom, like I felt my stomach drop. I was like, oh my God, like I am there. I feel this so much. And you're right. Like we give advice to kids that no one's thinking about you as much as you think that they are. And I feel like we try to give it to ourselves and then we don't believe it. I think especially online. Where, we've got our keyboard warriors who will hop in here and there. But the lunchroom, I'm going to be thinking about this for a while now. Like anytime that I start to get nervous, I'll be like, Hunter, you just got your little tray. You guys will just go sit at a table. Who cares? Sit at a table. So I really enjoy these perspectives. And I think that they shed light on a lot of the experiences that small business owners who don't want to be influencers or who feel that drag to show up and do social media, like it gives them the permission to be themselves, to, what is the term, like walk to their own drum or whatever it is, right? And just do their business. And so I really, really love this.
Well, and also, let's think about, all right, it's 2025, right? We're living in a world of AI and like filters, and definitely there are people out there fibbing about their own success or how perfect and beautiful their lives are. So yeah, show up and be imperfect. Show up and be super honest. I think a little vulnerability can go a long way to connect with people. So people don't want you to be perfect. They're not going to trust you if you show up and you seem like super duper wonderful and polished all the time. I think you're really better off, and it's so much less energy. Everything I write and all of my social media is very much like my voice, because quite frankly, I've never wanted to be an actor, and like I'm much, much, much too lazy to pretend to be anything I'm not. So if you want somebody who's going to show up and speak in like corporate speak and talk about like, synergy, whatever. I don't know. Like I can never come up with those corporate words when I'm looking for them. But if you want somebody who's going to show up and use all those words, that's not me. So I just show up the way I am. And it means it's less energy for me. It's less work for me. And I'm truer to who I am, and people really get who I am.
Well, you bring up the imperfection. And this is something that I tell a lot of brands that I wind up working with too, because they're like, well, should we show people like this this in between that we're dealing with. And I'm like, absolutely, like show people the messy middle, because that's what people want to see right now. Like we have surpassed the time when everyone wants this perfect polished thing. And you brought up like people don't trust that anymore, and they don't. Like, so if something feels a little too polished, it's like, okay, how
Yeah.
real is this? How real is
Yeah.
this? And one of the best ways to stand out now is through personal branding, and is through more of that vulnerability and the transparency. I want to be careful with the word authenticity because I feel like it gets overused a lot, but
Sure.
really just being yourself, showing up, speaking in your voice, and connecting with the people who are best suited for that.
Right. I mean, and have you ever shown up on somebody's social media account and maybe they haven't posted in a while, and maybe like you can't even see their face, and all there is a bunch of graphics, which are very lovely, but don't have a lot of personality. And then my first question is this a real person? Is this a thing? And who is the person? Because people buy from peoples. I like instantly can't really trust that. I want to know who's behind it.
Exactly. Well, you see this a lot with designers, and I talk about this often with them too, where it's like, look, people, anybody, there's tons of people who can make great graphics. So
Sure.
how do you make sure that they choose you? How do you make sure there's tons of people who make like great bagels? How do you make sure that they choose you? And so I really, really appreciate how much we've dug into this today. I know you mentioned you've got a book coming out. I'd love for you to share with everyone what this book is going to be about, when they can expect to read it, all of that.
So the book is called Social Media Group Therapy, and it's based on a workshop that I give, which is my most popular workshop, where we really go through a lot of the things that people worry about with social media, the ways they feel about it and think about it, and how we can change how we're thinking and feeling about it so we can approach it with, a better attitude and more self-confidence and the will to show up and do the work. So in Social Media Group Therapy, the workshop, I mostly just deal with like the feelings, but in the actual book, I also cover like how to focus, because I know that's a problem for a lot of us. We fall down the social media rabbit hole. So we talk about different ways of ensuring that you stay focused on the task, also like the workflow that I use, and to do things more efficiently. So that gets covered as well. And it should be out in the next month or two. So maybe November, maybe December. I'm actually just waiting for the Library of Canada to approve my account so I can get an ISBN.
That is amazing. Once it does come out, make sure that you send me the link so that I can add it to the show notes so people can purchase this. I freaking love the title, and the title of your workshop as well. Like that is so, so smart. I want to ask you the questions that I love to ask every guest that comes on here as we kind of wrap this up. And the first is, what is something that you absolutely love about your brand?
I mean, I just love being able to show up and just be myself, and that I do get to connect with people who get me and I really get them. And I love the people I work with. I find, everyone I work with really wants to make the world a better place, and they don't have to be out there like saving the world in a huge way. But even one of the first projects we do in my group program, and a lot of times when I work with people, is we write a manifesto, which by the way is also included in my book. And I had this woman come, and she was a quilt designer, and I was like, oh gosh, what's this manifesto going to be like? It was one of the best manifestos I've ever read. It was all about how important personal expression is, how important creativity is, and how valuable it is to make things with your hands. And so no matter who I work with and no matter what they're doing, there are people, like everyone I work with wants to make the world a better place and wants to show up and do good for others.
I love that. I'm so excited to read this book. And last question that I want to ask is, if you could change one thing about your brand, what would you change?
I find this a really, really difficult question, because there are a lot of tiny things that I would change. And I find it really hard to think of like one big thing that I would change. Okay, so I'll tell you the thing that I'm not very good at, quite frankly. I find I'm a numbers person. I do love numbers. I love math, which is why I was a knitwear designer, because I really adore geometry and algebra and all that stuff. Despite my love of math and my love of numbers, I find everything financial extremely stressful. And I wish that I could change how I think about that. I've done a lot of work to try to think differently about it. And I have a friend who, when she makes invoices, says, I love making money. I love sending invoices. I love earning money. Whereas I'm the person who's like sitting on an invoice for way too long. So I wish I could fast track this mindset shift for myself there and make all of that stuff feel better for me.
Love it. I also love that you are a creative who enjoys math. I also am a creative who enjoys math, and I feel like I don't find a lot of other creatives who like math, so this is beautiful. So Kate, how can people get in contact with you if they want to continue this conversation? I know that I'm going to add the link to the book in the show notes, but any other ways that they can get in contact with you, anything else you want to share with them?
So you can find me at kategilbert.com. It's KATGILBERT. And I'm also on Instagram as KateGI. I could not get my full name. I have a very tiny YouTube channel, which is Kate Gilbert Coach, is how you find me. That's my handle. And you can find me on LinkedIn too. So I'm more than happy to connect with people. And I love meeting new people and hearing how they want to change the world and what they're doing to make their lives and other people's lives better through their business.
Perfect. Everyone, I'm going to share all of that in the show notes so that you can connect with Kate. Seriously, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. This was awesome.
Can I share one more thing? I'm sorry.
Of course.
Okay, if anybody would like it, I do have a freebie called Yikes I Should Post. It's a 5-minute posting process because a lot of the problems that people have all the time is like, I don't know what to post. You know, you sit down and say like, crap, what am I posting today? So this Yikes freebie that I have, it's kategilbert.com/yikes, will help you come up with a bunch of ideas immediately because a lot of ideas are sitting right under your nose. You don't even realize it. And I bet in 5 minutes, you can come up with a ton of ideas and maybe even make one post.
Perfect. And I'll add that to the show notes as well.